Do you fear for your safety and property?
Well, I am going to answer the second question first. And say no, I don't fear for my safety or property in the slightest. For one, Brighton is a glorious sunny place where everyone is happy and affluent and too lazy to riot.
Be concerned. So, did you think that Churchill Square needed to be fortified and shut down, as well as Brighton train station?
No, I didn't. Although I could see why it happened. It's not very difficult to get a train from London.
Right.
But if you look at the nature of how this moved within London, it's all generally been sporadic and within walking distance.
Okay.
So the likelihood of a group of you getting all on the train, paying for tickets,
that's what Jess said yesterday.
Was not something I thought would happen. There is areas in and around Brighton, but there are areas that might have populations that fit the bill, you know, for working class areas, low employment, low education level. But
as an outsider, foreigner, I haven't had a good chance of really understanding the political climate, only from an outside perspective. When reading the news, the people who are rioting are very much underrepresented and they don't have a voice. I know what Nick Clegg has said, I know what David Cameron has said, in all the major news outlets. If you had to really just sum up the cause behind the riots, what would you say the trigger is?
I'd like to first distinguish between the initial demonstrations and protests in response to the death of the young man in London who was shot by the police. And that initial reaction from his local community in response to what they felt was an inappropriate murder from the police, especially now given that the independent police commission has found that the gun was never fired and there was no ammunition.
What is your take on the recent rioting?
Well, it started off with a community reacting to a shooting of a young man who was shot, as they later found out, when he didn't have any sort of weapons on, or he had a weapon on him but he hadn't fired to start with. It was a bit of an overkill for the police, and the community reacted, and then it just seems like it sort of got out of hand, and several other cities have sort of sparked up in almost sort of not really action to it, but they're seeing that there's an opportunity for them to sort of vent their anger and their frustration at the system.
What other cities are you referring to?
So London was recently, there's certain different boroughs in London that are affected, but there's also Birmingham, Manchester, Bristol. And
from the news outlets that I've been tuning into, BBC News and the Daily Mail and the City in London, all of the politicians and innocent victims and more affluent class people, their views of these riots are represented and published. But the actual rioters, it seems like the ones that are interviewed are like the least qualified.
Well, it's because you have
speaking on the calls or what the.
Well, it's because you have a right-wing media that control the majority of the press in the UK, so they're not going to bother listening to the actual people that it's affecting and actually listening to just random members of the public or random members of these communities. They'll just be taking on comments from, like you said, the more affluent and the politicians who pretty much have caused it in the first place.
Yeah, because there were riots when they spiked the tuition to $9,500 for students.
I was there. I would call them demonstrations.
There were demonstrations.
They were demonstrations.
Not looting, not rioting, not overthrowing the government.
Generally, people were very, very angry and quite.
We're joined by Kai Wan, who is a resident of Rugby. He's currently residing in Brighton, and he has intentions to go to America for a holiday and travel the East Coast. Right now, he's joining us in order to share his perspective on the recent rioting that initiated in London. And we really want to know, in California, how legitimate are these threats? Will it spill over into Brighton? And what are your general views on it all?
My general views is that I don't think it'll spread any further. The politicians in Britain have got off foot. They're demanding more police to be out. They're putting in measures where the police to have more powers to arrest, to detain suspects, and maybe even, if it gets even worse, highly doubt, bring measures about having more force, as in maybe water cannons or bullets, if it gets really bad. But obviously the police and the government don't want to do this, because that's only in the dire most emergency. But it's good to know that the politicians, our British politicians, have thought about this and have measures in place.
I mean, Brighton, I don't think we have anything to worry about in Brighton. We're so far from the main places that are rioting. I think usually the areas that are most effective have a portion of population in them that has been most affected by government policy, mainly young people as well, that have obviously been left out of
so
certain
it's not
privileges.
as widespread. I've been trying to console my family by explaining that photographers and journalists have a way of taking shots of a burning building and exaggerating it to make it seem like it's the entire borough of London on fire.
The riots
it's not
are
true,
very,
right?
very contained. They're very contained.
Yeah,
very contained. And as far as Brighton goes, we have nothing down here.
Okay. So what about if I do happen to travel into London, I go by the Palace? Am I in danger?
No, of course not.
Okay.
No, you definitely wouldn't be.
You very much have to be associated with those groups.
And also, the rioters aren't going around just attacking random people. These are rioters that obviously they're looking to loot shops. So if in the very, very small chance you happen to see a bunch of rioters, you don't know. They don't come at you. They're not kind of armed.
My brother lives in London, and I've had one conversation about it with him. Have you seen anything? Nope, he's going to work on the tube, fine. He's not even passing. I mean, he lives in central Oxford, just off Oxford Street. That's really central London.
Yeah, right.
But he's not. He's just seeing the newspapers in the morning on the tube. That's what he's seeing of it.
Okay.
And I don't even have anybody in London who can gain sort of a better insider's perspective of. So.
Okay. Would you say that while traveling to cinema, to work, to visit friends, you alter your routes of travel out of precaution, or you postpone a trip to London to visit your brother due to the rioting?
No, I haven't.
It doesn't affect
I haven't
you,
noticed anything.
Right.
Too much. I haven't thought about it. The only times I've thought about it is when we're talking about during work, and we're talking about safety, extra safety,
right,
and when I'm watching the news.
Right.
So. I was talking to my grandma this morning, she was saying it's all about the hood. About hoods.
She banned the hood.
She'd say they should stop selling clothes with hoods on and then it'll all be fine.
There you go.
Tried to explain it a little more, but no, I haven't been dodging people wearing hoods.
I follow BBC, like I mentioned, Yahoo homepage, my MSNBC homepage. In 2008, the G20, there was rioting. And last year when they increased the student tuition fees for university, there was rioting and they destroyed demonstrations. And now there is a killing, if I'm not mistaken, a killing of Mark Duggan, which triggered the rioting in South London. And then now there's rioting with people in California.
I don't think it triggered the rioting. It didn't trigger the rioting, it triggered the events that led up to the rioting.
Okay. Do you feel safe?
In Brighton, completely.
Do you feel like if you had a trip planned in London, you should probably postpone it for safety precautions?
Well, I mean, if it was within London,
Right.
It depends where it is. These things get hyped up, beyond what they are, and you can take a photo of one street with 5 burning cars, 2 burning buildings, and a gang of films, and they think that every single street. But 2 streets over, it can be completely quiet.
Exactly.
It's not like there are thousands of people roaming the streets, pulling people from vehicles and battering or anything like that.
Jeff?